This show is part of the RetroZap.com podcast network.
Now, prepare yourselves for Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels Special Edition.
Hello, Scoundrel Nation. Welcome back to Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels and this Scoundrel Special Edition. I am your host, Dennis Keithly, and with me is my friend and co-host, Jay Krebs. Jay, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing really well, Dennis. Thank you so much for asking. Hello, Scoundrel Nation. Really excited to get into our topic tonight for our Scoundrel Special Edition.
First off, Darth Taxus can't join us. He's having a really busy week at work, and I'm just back from vacation. Alaska's amazing, in case you wanted to know. But we wanted to get something out, but there's not a lot going on in the news right now, and so we just decided to have a little bit of fun here, and we'll get into the discussion topic in just a second. But, you know, as is usual on our Scoundrel Special Editions, we don't cover the news. We just get into some sort of a game, a discussion, or review, or something like that. However, there's a little bit of news that we wanted to cover because otherwise it won't be timely. So, Jay, what's going on?
Well, I am very, very pleased to announce that Star Wars Celebration Anaheim finally has a date. In Anaheim 2020, the dates are, mark your calendars, for August 27th through the 30th. So, Scoundrels, hope you can make it. Tickets go on sale June 21st at 9 a.m. Pacific time, which is noon Eastern, 11 Central. And the hotel block opens at 10 a.m. Pacific, which is 1 Eastern and noon Central. So if you are thinking about going to Celebration, again, you know, we've all been there and done that, and we've got plenty of t-shirts to prove it, and highly suggest going out to Celebration if you can make it out to Anaheim. So Dennis, are you going to get to make it out there?
Yes. The only reason I wouldn't have been able to make it is if the dates conflicted with a prior trip that I've arranged, and so far they do not. So my intention is to go, and I will be online next Friday buying tickets. You know, it's going to be at the Anaheim Convention Center. There's a ton of hotels around. You can't currently book a hotel by yourself. You have to go through this block because hotels typically run on a 12-month inventory. So you couldn't go out there right now and buy a hotel, get a hotel room, reserve one if you wanted to independently of this. So anyways, I find it a little weird that the hotel block is opening an hour after the tickets go. I'm wondering if that is to reduce the stress on the server, because I know there was a lot of long waits trying to buy tickets for Chicago because you could get the hotel rooms at the same time as you're buying your tickets. So anyway, and you know, the other thing I would caution is if you don't end up with the hotel you want when the hotel block opens up, don't spare. The hotel rooms open up all the time. There's it'll be more than a year. You know, we're talking about 14 months between when the hotel block opens up and Celebration starts. You know, Jay, you, I, and Taxus, we all were messing around with our hotel rooms like the week before Celebration. Yes. And
it's true.
We got into our final rooms, you know, at the last second, so to speak. So those things will happen. So just be patient. And I'm hoping they're going to do, what was the resale market again? So if you don't get the ticket, I don't think they'll sell out on that first day on tickets. But if you don't get the ticket you want, you know, there's always that secondary market that they had set up. So, you know, you got time to figure out what you want to do. And it seemed like there was always plenty of tickets to that reseller going forward. But we'll have more on Celebration Anaheim in the months to come. So, you know, come back and see what we have to say or what we find out, and we'll be happy to talk about it. But let's go ahead and move on to our discussion. Tonight, we are going to talk about the top droid moments from the Star Wars films. This was just kind of a topic I came up with today because I don't know why I was thinking about Droid. It was K-2SO, as a matter of fact, that I was thinking about. And I was thinking about some of his lines. And I was just thinking about, well, you know, what was my favorite from Rogue One? And then I got to be thinking about, well, what were the best droid moments from the movies? And, well, in Star Wars in general. But then I restricted it to the movies because just like our best lightsaber duel discussion, if you open it up to the animated shows, there's way too many Chopper, R2-D2, C-3PO moments that, you know, AP5, all these other droids, you would never be able to get through this discussion in the course of a single show. So we're going to just restrict it to the live action films, the 10 of those. And we're going to go movie by movie, trilogy by trilogy, and the Star Wars stories, and then we're going to come up with an ultimate winner. So this is going to be kind of a quicker discussion than we've usually done for our brackets, and we hope you enjoy this. But let's get started with The Phantom Menace. The moments that I picked out from that were when we first meet R2-D2 and he fixes the hyperdrive. Then later in the movie when R2 meets C-3PO and tells him that he's naked because his parts are showing. And later in the movie during the battle against the Trade Federation battleship when R2 is with Anakin piloting the Naboo N1 starfighter. Of those three, Jay, which one is your favorite?
Oh, goodness. They're all so great because, we could sit here and discuss these forever, and we promised that we wouldn't do this because they're all so iconic moments. I mean, you got to think about it. I mean, R2's always fixing a hyperdrive, and 3PO and R2 together, hello, what a duo. And then Anakin flying with R2. And that's the one I'm going to go with just simply because of the fact that, we know so much of the history with R2 and how he became Padme's droid, and then eventually for Anakin as his wedding gift from Padme, and then ultimately rode with Anakin or flew with Anakin. So I'm going to go with number 3, R2 with Anakin.
Okay. My inclination is to go with number 1, R2 fixes the hyperdrive, simply because it's his introduction, and technically it would be his introduction into the entire saga because it's episode 1. And he does go out there and fix it as all the other droids are getting blown away around him.
Right.
I don't want to laugh about that, but you had that R5 unit who gets shot and then woo, his parts are flying off in the distance. But I'm not really married to that choice. So we can go ahead and move R2 with Anakin on to the next part of our discussion there. That's a good one as well. So.
And
R2,
ironically, my second was R2 fixing the hyperdrive for exactly the reason that you said as well. It was like literally survival of the fittest there. And, that's where we get it this turn. So, yeah.
He comes back in, he's got all this carbon scoring marks, and then Padme and volunteers or is instructed by, the queen, the fake queen, to clean him up so that she can kind of spy on the rest of the crew. Yeah. All right. Moving on to Attack of the Clones, the 3 that I picked, and if you think of any others that I missed, then feel free to contribute them. But when R2 reveals his booster rockets, which before then we didn't know he had, when R2 rescues Padme in the droid factory, when he shuts down the droid conveyor belt, and then later in the arena when 3PO gets his head knocked off, and it gets knocked off in the factory and then swapped out, and gets his head put on the battle droid before R2 fixes him. So, did you have any others, or which one of those 3 was your favorite?
Oh, all of those are so great. I love how you put R2 reveals his boosters. It's like, oh, so funny. Oh, goodness gracious. I'm going to have to go with R2 revealing his boosters, actually, because it was like, wait, what? He actually has these? This is really cool. And of course, that was an add-on by Anakin, but that's all good. So yeah, that's one I'm going to go with. The only other one that I could actually think of was when R2 was with Padme in basically in her suite, and he was protecting her or looking over her while she was sleeping, and unbeknownst to him, the Kohuns were there anyway. Yeah.
And he completely failed to detect them.
And he did completely fail. So I like the revealing of the boosters a little bit more.
I do too. I remember seeing that in one of the trailers. Maybe it was just one of the television preview spots before the movie came out. And I was like, oh, wow, that's kind of cool. And then, of course, I remember it sparking a lot of discussion at the time because, well, wait, where have those been this entire time? So the most heroic thing is really when he rescues Padme, which is kind of part of the same scene with boosters. Mm-hmm. But and then I don't know, it annoys a lot of people, but I did find when 3PO had his head on the battle droid body kind of funny, and then when it gets knocked off and R2's dragging his head back, all the puns, I'm absolutely beside myself. This is such a drag. I like that as well. But we'll go with R2 reveals his boosters there. So let's move on to Revenge of the Sith. And the 3 that I picked out there are when R2 fights off the Buzz Droid during the opening battle sequences are heading towards the Invisible Hand. Later, when they're on the Invisible Hand and R2 sprays the Super Battle Droids with oil and catches them all on fire. And then later in the movie is when, this is more of the reaction than anything, when the action's dying down towards the conclusion and Bail Organa, instructs 3PO's mind to be wiped, and he has that reaction.
What?
I'm just going out and say, yeah, I mainly threw that in there to get 3, because I was having a hard time coming up with 3 moments for this movie, but I don't actually like that one at all. I felt bad. I don't feel like 3PO deserved to have his mind wiped, but that's a long discussion for another day. Of these 3, for me, it's R2 versus the super battle droids, and I would go so far to actually expand that moment into his entire time on the invisible hand. When he's trying to hide the communicator so that the super battle droids won't hear him. Then he defeats them, and then the ship starts to plummet towards Coruscant, and he goes flying down the thing. And then later he comes streaking into the passageway, and he's pursued by the battle droids and such. So that's my vote. What do you think?
Oh, hands down. You read my mind that whole time too, with him, just looking around with his little observer thing. And then when Anakin says, "Don't worry, he'll be along shortly," then you just see him rocketing across. Wow. And then hits, see, told you. And the whole no loose wire jokes. I mean, that was all, it was R2's whole moment in that movie. So yeah, definitely. I love it.
So now we have to pick the winner moment for the prequels. And so we have R2 with Anakin from The Phantom Menace. R2 reveals his boosters from the Clone Wars. Attack of the Clones. And then R2 versus Super Battle Droids from Revenge of the Sith. And R2 is going to be in a lot of these moments because, he's one of the most prominent droids in all the movies. But of those 3, which one do you think?
Oh, I got to go with R2 and the Super Battle Droids. Because it's more than a moment. It's a whole whole experience, I guess. But I love that.
Yeah, I can't disagree. I think he really shines there, and so we'll move him on as the prequel. That moment as the prequel trilogy winner. Okay, well, let's head over then to the original trilogy, and in A New Hope. We have R2 and Threepio escaping from the Star Destroyer. Now that includes R2 getting the plans from Leia, heading towards the escape pod and, bickering with C-3PO about whether they should go in. The next moment I put down is when he's playing Dejarik with Chewbacca, and, we have the better let the Wookiee win moment. So that's kind of an R2 and Threepio moment. I guess another moment that I left out is the droid auction scene there on Tatooine. Not the auction, but the droid sale. And then the final one is have R2 and 3PO, fooling the stormtroopers and then shutting down the trash compactor on the Death Star. So of those, I'm going with their antics on the Death Star. But what do you think?
Are you talking about the shutdown of the trash compactor?
Yeah, and just kind of like when 3PO tells the stormtrooper, I'm going to take my counterpart to maintenance because all the excitement's fried his circuits. That whole sequence.
And oh no, shut them all down! Hurry!
Yes,
oh
exactly.
No, they're dying. Yes, I love that one too. Yeah, that was my pick out of those 3. But I will say, if you would have put the one in with the Jawa sale, that would have been my favorite, because the whole idea of just 3PO just trashing R2 the whole time and calling him, every name in the book. And then when they finally get back together on the sandcrawler and he says, it is you, and he's so excited to see him again. It just shows his true colors too. But yeah, definitely out of those 3 though.
You've kind of convinced me to go ahead and write that one in. Because you're right. That is the we're gonna write that one in. R2 and 3PO on Tatooine. Because that is the essence of the relationship between those 2 droids. And yeah, I mean, because the classic bickering and companionship that they have there, it's like it's all phases in that one moment. Or in that one scene, I should say, because don't call me a mindless philosopher, you overweight glob of grease. I mean, just some of those insults and things that they
go that way. You'll be malfunctioning within a day in your decided scrap pile, and then and then he's so excited they see him. Yeah,
and then when R2-D2 gets stunned by the Jawas, I don't know what it is about that scene, but I absolutely love it. I think it's mainly because of the watching R2-D2 get shocked in that little mournful wail that he makes as he falls over. Clunk. And then all Jawas come up and pick them up and haul them off the thing.
I agree.
All right, so good call there. We're gonna write that one in as our winner for A New Hope. Okay, The Empire Strikes Back. The first one I've got is Yoda and the Swamp Monster on Dagobah. So or not Yoda. Yeah, well, Yoda. They meet Yoda after that, and he fights with Yoda. Yoda pulls out the stick and he's on him. Mine. And then R2 got swallowed by the swamp monster and spit out. So I'm kind of incorporating everything that happens on Dagobah into one thing there. Later, when 3PO gets blasted and reassembled on Bespin, I thought he had a lot of great dialogue, with Chewbacca there, with his head getting put on backwards. And then finally, probably the most heroic thing any of them does is when R2 fixes the hyperdrive on the Millennium Falcon. Any of these three speak to you, or do you have a different moment from The Empire Strikes Back?
Oh, goodness. They all speak to me for different reasons. I'm gonna let you pick yours, and I'm gonna ponder on this, meditate on this. I will.
Well, as I said, R2 fixing the hyperdrive, I think, is probably the most heroic thing any of the droids do in The Empire Strikes Back. That being said, Yoda fighting with R2-D2 over the light, that's from Luke's camp, where R2 kind of sneaks out with his pincher, and Yoda starts beating him with his stick, and then 3PO bickering with Chewbacca. Those are just so classic. So I'm debating between those two. Do you agree with me on that, or are you leaning towards the hyperdrive?
I'm telling you what, it's going to be a real game time decision here for me, because all three of them I love for different reasons.
Well, can we throw out the hyperdrive and maybe go between those first two?
Sure. Yes.
Okay.
And I think I'm going to go with the whole Dagobah thing. For me personally, anyways, because there's so much of the, dichotomy that goes on between Yoda and R2, and then just seeing R2 when it's raining outside and he gets way up on his tippy toes, I guess you could say, and he's trying to see in and trying to figure out what's going on, and he's sort of kind of left out in the rain. He's got such a personality, and there's just so much, knowing what we know now about the entire saga, there's so much history there. Yoda knew who he was.
Yeah, it changes that entire scene.
It does.
When you realize that. So, we'll go ahead and move that one on then, because I was fine with either of those first two going on there. So let's take a look at Return of the Jedi. The first one I picked out was an R2-D2 and 3PO arrive at Jabba's palace, and they're presenting Luke's hologram. And he's negotiating, and then Luke says, gesture my goodwill, I present you with these two droids, and C-3PO's like, what did he say? R2, you're playing the wrong message. That's always been funny. And then that goes on to them going down to the droid master who's torturing another droid and fitting them with restraining bolts and giving them jobs. The next one I got is on the sail barge when R2 launches out Luke's lightsaber and then ultimately saves C-3PO from Salacious Crumb. And then the last one I have is when 3PO gets revealed as to the Ewoks, and they revere him as a deity. I like all these an awful lot, and they're classic Star Wars, but which way are you leaning?
Well, I have to say the moment that I just remember as a kid when I watched Return of the Jedi over and over and over again was the whole relationship of 3PO as the Ewok deity, just because he was so surprised at first that they were doing this, and being a protocol droid, you wouldn't think that he would in any way, shape, or form take any kind of pleasure in this, but you could tell he was enjoying it. So I just love that. But of course, R2 launching Luke's lightsaber is just so amazing as just one pure moment. So for me, it's definitely between those two. So what do you think?
I'm with you. I mean, I love 3PO's line from, about you're playing the wrong message. But, that moment when Luke does his salute and R2-D2 launches the lightsaber, and then R2 does quite a bit of stuff right there. He goes in there and he saves 3PO from Salacious Crumb, and then he shoves 3PO over the side of the sail barge.
Indeed.
And so that's really good. But I'm leaning towards that one. Because as much as I love 3PO, I'm a huge C-3PO fan. I just feel like R2-D2 had a little bit more agency in his scene and was more of a direct actor. as opposed to letting the circumstance. Now, that said, 3PO did do the awesome rendition of the Star Wars trilogy when he was reciting that to the Ewoks. This is a hard choice.
It is. You came up with some really good ones on all of these.
Yeah, I think, having just talked this out, I think I'm leaning towards 3PO and the Ewoks.
Wow. Talk about your game time decisions.
What do you think?
Yeah, I'll go. I definitely would go with that one. Sure.
Okay.
Like I said, as a kid, that was definitely for me the most memorable, and the one that stuck with me the most, even though it was so super cool, to see R2 launching that lightsaber and to see, the whole Jabba's palace thing. That just stuck with me for some reason.
Yeah, well, me too. It's good moments there. All right, let's go ahead and name our original trilogy winner. We have R2-D2 and C-3PO on Tatooine. We have R2-D2 with Yoda and the Swamp Monster on Dagobah when The Empire Strikes Back. And then we have C-3PO from Return of the Jedi as the winner there. Of these three, I can rule out R2-D2 with Yoda and the Swamp Monster on Dagobah. As much as I love that scene, I like the other two more. What do you think?
I'm right there with you. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So now we just have to decide between A New Hope and Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. Do you have a feeling one way or the other?
I gotta go with A New Hope. That the whole relationship between the two of them, and it's just so classic.
Yeah, I don't think I can disagree. I think that is the best example of the partnership that those two had, is there on Tatooine, and that's kind of set the standard for everything to follow. So it's got an unfair advantage that way since it was first. But I also think the lines that those two exchange are best on Tatooine than anywhere else in the saga. So
agreed.
All right, well, we'll go with that as the original trilogy winner. So now let's take a look at the sequels, and we don't have nearly as many R2 and Threepio moments here. We're moving on to some other droids. The first one that I put down is when BB-8 meets Rey and kind of gives her the puppy dog routine so that she takes him along, and then they kind of become fast friends. And that extends into when they're on Jakku and they meet Finn and chase him down, and BB-8 keeps shocking him and all that business up until they get on the Falcon. The next moment I put down is when 3PO interrupts Han and Leia's reunion. Captain Solo. You probably didn't recognize me because of the red arm. And then the last one I have is when R2-D2 revives and combines his galactic map with BB-8's fragment of a map. Did you have any others you wanted to add to the conversation?
Oh, those are so great. The only other one that I would probably add is when BB-8 and Poe are reunited. And he's like, BB-8, my buddy, and he kind of gives him the scratch, and he's like, oh, I'm so happy to see him. But I'm actually going to pick number 3 that you have here, when R2 revives and combines his map with BB-8's. Also, not just for the moment itself, but for what it symbolizes in my head, with the original and prequel trilogies combining now with the new saga and moving forward together. So that's my pick for that reason.
Yeah, it's interesting because I agree with you on this one. And when I was thinking about these moments, well, there's plenty of droids in The Force Awakens, and BB-8 certainly has an important role. He's carrying that fragment of the map, and everyone's looking for him. That's the whole first half of the movie. Mm-hmm. I just don't feel like the droids play as big a role in The Force Awakens as they do in most of the other movies. Mm-hmm. But that being said, I did like the revival of R2 and them finding that piece of hope at the end of the movie when they combine the two pieces of the map, and then that gives them their map to Luke, and then we wondered what was going to happen after that for 2 years. So we'll move that on as the Force Awakens winner. Sequels are going to have a really short discussion because there's only one more movie so far. Rise of Skywalker's not out yet. But in The Last Jedi, I have 4 for this one because I felt like the droid moments were bigger and more impactful here. But the first one is from the beginning of the movie, when Poe is attacking the Dreadnought, and the things start to malfunction, and then BB-8 starts doing the finger in the dike routine where he's plugging one thing at a time, and then ultimately ends up using his head to fix the whole thing. So that's number one. Number two was when BB-8 defeats the prison guards using all the coins the drunk alien put in him as when he thought he was a slot machine. Number three was when R2-D2 uses Leia's hologram as a dirty trick against Luke to try and convince him he needs to come back and help the Resistance. And number four, I have BB-8 hijacking the AT-ST above the Supremacy at the end of the movie. There's a few other moments. If you want to add any of them for discussion, go ahead. But what do you think?
You've got some good ones here. The only other one that I could think of was in the basically the hideout on Crate when 3PO sees Luke. He's like, Master Luke, Yeah. But that's about the only other one, just because it harkens back to the original trilogy, which is also why I love R2 using Leia's hologram as the dirty trick, because that was awesome. But I think I'm gonna have to go with defeating the prison guards, just because I just thought that was such a cute usage of a situation that BB-8 kind of turned around and was able to shoot those little coins out, and then you see DJ in the back just like pop, pop, boop, 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 like almost dodging them as he's spitting them out. So
Buddy, did you do this?
Yes. So that's my number one, very closely followed with BB-8 hijacking the AT-ST, because that was just, for me, I don't know, it was just so unexpected.
Yeah, but BB-8 with defeating the prison guards was what immediately came to mind, because I was including him dealing with that drunk alien, getting tossed out of the casino, and then helping DJ steal the ship. And just kind of that fiend innocence is like, when DJ says, we stole it. And he's like, what? Maybe? If he had an arm, you could see him putting it over his heart. Like, no, I wouldn't do such a thing. But yeah, I like that one. And that was the first moment I thought of when I was thinking about The Last Jedi. So we will move that on. Okay. So between that and R2 combining his map, which is our top moment from the sequel trilogy?
Oh, goodness. Well, you know what? Actually, as we're sitting here talking, I completely forgot about the whole interaction between Finn and BB-8 on the Millennium Falcon when he was trying to get him to reveal.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one, too.
The location of the Rebel base. And then, of course, BB-8 gives him that iconic thumbs up, that was so highly debated, which was so cool. But out of these two, what's your
I almost
pick?
want to go with that
I'm
one.
Copping out.
I almost want to go with BB-8 and Finn. Now that you brought that one up, I don't know how that slipped my mind.
I know, I don't either, until we got to really talking about the whole comedic, aspect of things. But
I almost want to. Okay.
Yeah, I kind of want to go with that one, quite honestly.
All right. Then we're going to go back.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. With me, let me strike this out.
We're getting clutch here. We're like we're bringing in the lefty, and we're the relief pitcher. But
yeah, I want to go with that because I feel like that was such an iconic moment for BB-8's character, and he really is the central droid of the sequel trilogy. I mean, 3PO's got a role. R2-D2's barely in these movies. And I like that. Let's go with that one.
Okay, cool. Okay. I'm glad I thought of it.
I am glad too. You've done this twice now. I appreciate that. Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the Star Wars story movies. We're going to start with Rogue One. And this is pretty much all K-2SO. So, and a lot of them are lines. And there's a few moments, but for instance, there's when K-2SO meets Jen on board the U-Wing, and she, they discover that she's got the gun, and she explains that they need to let her keep it because trust goes both ways. And then K-2SO's indignant. He's like, "You're going to let her keep it? Do you want to know the odds that she'll use it against you? They're high, very high." So that's the first one I came up with. When they get to Scarif, and they're talking about, if they can't get to the shield, then they'll crash into it, and then they'll die in the void of space. And he's like, "Not me. I can survive in space." I don't know. Alan Tudyk did such a great job delivering these lines. And then when they're on Jeddah, and he catches the grenade, and is like, right, and throws it back over his shoulder at the stormtroopers, and he reprimands, Jen's like, "Did you know that wasn't me?" and then when they confront the stormtroopers, and the one asks K-2SO where he's taking these prisoners, he goes, "These are prisoners, right? I'm taking them to prison to imprison them in prison." Right. And then finally, when he's defending the archives while Jen and Cassian are trying to find the Death Star plans. So, of those 5, what do you think?
So many K2 at moments. Man, I'm telling you what, every moment with K2 is precious in and of itself. And, oh, man. Okay. Out of these, I gotta say, okay, the whole imprison them in prison thing, because when he pops off and he smacks Cassian in the face, and he'll be like, "There's more of that if you mouth off again," or something, and he's just playing it up big time, trying to be like this big bad, Imperial droid when he's not, obviously. And then he gets all upset about, "I can run my own diagnostics, thank you very much."
Yeah. I'm with you. For me, the first 2 I thought of were that moment and when he was defending the archives. And obviously, the defending the archives is much more tragic and dramatic. And, you saw how upset Cassian got when he knew that K2 was about to, get obliterated. But I've got to go with the fun moment, and that's the imprison, the scene on Jeddah. And so, yeah, I think we move that one on in our discussion. So let's turn to Solo, a Star Wars story. And again, just like Rogue One was all about K-2SO, Solo is all about L3-37. So first we have her arguing with the game master inside the casino on Vandor, and then grabbing him by the face. Lando has to tell her, let the mean man's face go. Then when they get to the Millennium Falcon and she's slicing the fence and she tells them not to watch, she's like, "I can tell you're watching me. Stop watching." And then when they're on the next ones, when they're on the way to Corellia, they're doing, not Corellia, Kessel, when they're doing the Kessel run. And it's just her and Kira in the cockpit, and they're doing their girl talk session about, her little problem. And, and then having to, and then prior to that's when she tells Lando, you're going to have to do that thing again to fix whatever the problem she has with her back. And then the final one is when she's liberating the droids on Kessel, and then ultimately gets shot in that process. But I love that line, when she frees the one droid by removing the straining bolt, and you can tell, he beeps at her like, "What am I supposed to do now?" She's like, "I don't know, go liberate your little droid brothers and sisters. I need room to work here." I just loved
and he does.
I love Phoebe Waller's delivery on those lines. She did such a good job with that. But so I am leaning towards the liberation scene from Solo, but I can be talked into any of these others. What do you think?
Yes, I do love that scene as well. And then, of course, as a result, she becomes part of the Falcon. And that moment when you know that she's been integrated into the Falcon, and you hear that noise as she's kind of booting up, and then you realize that you've heard that noise so many times before, but just never knew what it was. And now you put a name with a face, so to speak. So I do love that. I do love the girl thing, the girl talk on the Falcon too, because that's just so freaking hilarious.
Yeah.
In so many ways. And again, so unexpected. I mean, you just never really expect to hear anything like that. And I do love also when they're walking back to the Falcon and she's just mouthing off at Lando and saying, "You couldn't even find your way to Black Spire Outpost, and oh, what are you, my organic overlord?" He's like, "No, I'm your captain. Hello."
Yeah.
Oh gosh, but yeah, I'll go with liberating the droids too, because again, it was her at her finest.
Yeah,
and it was so what she always wanted to do. Yes, yeah. And of course we see that in the trailer as well. And it's just so her, and in liberating the droids, she almost did just the opposite by imprisoning herself, but she did it out of love in a way. So
Yeah, I agree with you. The other ones were moments, but I think this was the moment for L3, her defining moment in the movie. So, okay, well, for the Star Wars story movies, we're down to that L3 liberating the droids versus K2 imprisoning them in prison. I'm leaning towards K2 in that one. As much as I like L3, I just love K2, and I'm having a very hard time separating just my love of the character from analyzing from looking at a moment. But anyways, between these two, I'm leaning towards the K2 moment. How about you?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I could flip a coin and be happy either way, honestly. So yeah, I'm totally happy with imprisoning them in prison.
All right. Well, we'll move that on to the finals. So speaking of which, we now have to decide between the prequel winner, which was Artoo versus the Super Battle Droids, the original trilogy winner, which is Artoo and Threepio on Tatooine, the sequel winner, which is Finn and BB-8, and the Star Wars story winner, which is K2 imprisoning them in prison. Of these four, to me, it comes down to R2 versus the Super Battle Droids and R2 and Threepio on Tatooine. The other two are great moments, but I just feel like they pale to the overall significance of the other two. But what do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would definitely have to agree with you on that too.
Okay. So that gets us down to R2 and Threepio on Tatooine versus R2 against the Super Battle Droids. Of those two, I know which way I would vote, but I don't want to prejudice your thought. Which one are you thinking?
I gotta stick with R2 and Threepio on Tatooine.
Okay,
that one still, for me.
I was prepared to argue with you about that, but we agree.
Well, good.
So, yeah,
worked out perfectly.
Yeah, I think for all the reasons we said earlier, that's just classic, and it gives them, because you really do see how they're counterparts there, and that's how 3PO always introduces them. I'm C-3PO, human cyber relations, and this is my counterpart, R2-D2. And they do different things, 3PO being the translator, R2 being the mechanic of the group, but they also know each other well. And when you consider that, especially after the prequels, when 3PO's had his mind wiped, that R2 probably had to help bring him along at that point, because he probably didn't remember, he had all this programming and he knew all those languages and things still, but he wouldn't have remembered everything. It's like, it's just like when he's talking to Luke, as they're getting cleaned up, and he says, oh, you know about the war against the Empire versus Rebellion, and 3PO says, yes, that's how we came to be in your service, we've been enemy battalions, I think, and he's not very good and it's kind of like that. I don't know that that's what George Lucas meant at the time, but it's kind of a hint that 3PO's had this mind wipe. He just doesn't, but he's not certain about this and what's happened to him in the past. So, but I think it's definitely a very worthy winner.
Yay! And coming in at the last minute.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, then that is our champion, Scoundrels. We'd love to know what you think. So if you want to drop us an email at sqpod@retrozap.com or hit us up on Twitter or the Discord server, the RetroZap Discord server, we'd love to hear about that. The links for all that stuff will be in the show notes. But I could see a lot of different winners for this, and I'm certain we forgot a moment or two. And if you've thought about another classic droid moment that we didn't mention, we'd love to hear about that as well. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. Jay, before we go, what do you got going on recently with Star Wars?
Well, right now I actually just started Alphabet Squadron, listening to that, so by Alexander Freed, and I'm really liking it, and a lot more than I actually thought I would. And that sounds horrible to say right off the bat, but I do. I really like it. And I'm putting together some things for a new That's So Wizard, so Scoundrels, be on the lookout for that here within the next couple of weeks or so, as we put together some new recordings for all of your listening pleasures. And of course, you can always find my archive blogs over at Coffee with Kenobi and my Core Worlds Couture fashion review blogs as well. Yeah,
I haven't started that yet, mainly because I want us to record our discussion of Jedi Lost and Master Apprentice first.
And we will.
Yeah, we're getting closer to that. But I will say this, with Alphabet Squadron, if you get the chance, check out the TIE Fighter tie-in comic series from Marvel. It's really good as well. And it's got some what looks like to be teasers and some foreshadowing for Alphabet Squadron going on. So check that out. You can find our absent co-host Darth Taxus on The Geek Supreme each week with Scott Murray, Jeff McGee, and Regina Davis with their Around the Horn style geek topic discussion show. And for myself, you can find my comic reviews on RetroZap.com, and each month I'm talking Star Wars comics with Jovial J. Shepard on Jedi Journals. My wife Beth and I host a Star Trek podcast called Warp Trails, which is exclusively on the RetroZap podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to find us on social media, we are at SQPod on Twitter and Instagram, and on Facebook at facebook.com/SQPod. You can email us at sqpod@retrozap.com, and you can follow Darth Taxus on Twitter at Darth Taxus. Jay is at Joyce Krebs, and I am at DJKVER2. Speaking of RetroZap, we are a proud part of the RetroZap.com podcast network. The network currently features more than a dozen shows covering everything from retro gaming, movies, collecting, and a ton of Star Wars. Subscribe to them all on the network feed. We'd love a review wherever you listen to your podcast, and tell your friends, especially the ones that like Star Wars, about our show. We'd really appreciate that. Word of mouth is the best way to help us grow. And if they don't know how to subscribe to podcasts, well, then, grab their phone and show them how. Not everyone knows how to do this. And that'll do it for this Scoundrels Special Edition. We'll talk to you soon with another edition of Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels. Until then, Scoundrel Nation, may the Force be with you.